Hello, friends. It's Vinyl Ventures, and we're back. And we've got a great show coming at you today.
We're gonna groove.
We're gonna groove. That's the
hint.
The little hint.
Yeah.
What do you think it is? Guesses?
Maybe we're gonna take some dance lessons. Maybe learn how to do the mashed potato. Do you remember?
No.
Oh, it must be that we're gonna rank Led Zeppelin's studio records.
Bump, bump, bump.
We have done 50-some shows, and we've never really, other than the Essential Albums, which is so far in the past that I can't even remember it, we've never painted ourselves into a corner about the order of records or anything like that. So after some suggestions from different people, we thought we'd take one of the most popular bands, not the most, but one of them, and just go through their studio output and kind of rank them in order of, greatness maybe, or listenability. I mean, there's a lot of things you can
We're ranking them.
Yeah, we're ranking them. Led Zeppelin, I think, is a perfect group to do that with for the first time. They were like one of my favorite bands when I was like 13. You, on the other hand, were not a huge fan of them.
No.
Right? Tell us why.
Not till college. They were kind of I don't want to say the enemy, but they were like the big behemoth rock band.
Radio Sweethearts almost.
Radio Sweethearts.
Yeah.
And I was really into the punk scene, the underground scene. So they were kind of, and I never really even, before that, never really even got into them. I don't know why. I just kind of passed them by.
Mm-hmm.
And by college, I had some buddies who were into them, and that's when I did the precursor, hey, let's listen to 4. And after that, I'm like, oh, I like these guys. I bought a CD box set after college.
The one in 1990?
Yeah.
The 4? Oh, that's a great collection.
It's a great collection.
That is not on this.
No.
That is not on this show. We are specifically talking about studio albums, and you can make the argument that we only do 7 of them because Coda, their last album, was put out posthumously after John Bonham died, and it's kind of remnants of stuff they had recorded along the way.
And some leftovers.
Yeah. And since we're talking about that, I listened to that the other day, and it's a lot better than I thought.
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
I mean, because one thing I did for this exercise, I went through every single album from Coda on back to 1.
So you listen in reverse order.
In reverse order.
Yeah.
Which was an interest. I didn't want to do it in the regular order just because, hey, that's
what anybody would do.
That's what anybody do. I'm like, let's take this from reverse order and see what kind of an experience it is.
I love that idea.
It was interesting to listen to everything at least once.
Yeah.
I mean, it took a while.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because, their records aren't short. They became longer. Their music kind of became more epic as they went along. And it's interesting when I was going back. I mean, I've got basically the whole thing memorized in my head. So I loved your idea of listening in reverse, but I didn't do that. But Coda was something that I think back when I was a huge fan in my younger days, for some reason it didn't stick with me. But listening to it again, it's really a pretty great record.
Yeah, if we're going to start at the bottom, and Coda is, should we start?
Yeah.
We might as well.
We may as well. I think we already have. We're going to take our Vinyl Ventures record and replace it with Coda. And
Coda would be number 9, actually.
Yes.
Yes.
In the studio order?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's the 9th album released, and we're going to say it's our 9th in order.
I think so.
We're starting at the bottom and working our way up. So.
Yeah. We started to talk about this before we hit record.
Yes.
I will say it now. It's a very close tie between this one and the next one I have in order.
Yes.
As far as how much I like it. I mean, this starts with We're Gonna Groove, and that is a great song. And there's only 8 songs on this, right?
Yeah, there's only 8 songs. And very unlike Led Zeppelin, they're on the back.
Yeah, yeah. Which most of the time you can't tell unless there's a hype sticker that tells
Yes.
you don't know what's on the record. But starts with We're Gonna Groove, Poor Tom. Poor Tom is just kind of a weird, what would you call it? Almost Americana and sort of bluegrassy shuffle thing that I think only Led Zeppelin could have done. I Can't Quit You Baby, which is a fantastic version of that song.
Oh, yeah.
Walter's Walk. Second side is Ozone Baby, Darlene. Darlene's a weird tune.
Yeah, there's some... Everything seems to fit together, but nothing seems out of place. To me, this whole album seems more Led Zeppelin than some of the other ones.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones have songs that are just, you just scratch your head like, oh my God.
Yeah. And then we go to Bonzo's Montreux, which is John Bonham's famous like drum solo. And then Wearing and Tearing, which that's also a great song.
Yes.
So 8 tunes on this. And it's a struggle because as far as I'm concerned, this is number 9. Number 9.
Yeah. To me, this is the kind of album that it would have been a great box set add-on.
Yeah.
If box sets existed in 1982, but they weren't really a thing.
Right.
But I mean, it's kind of a bunch of, Led Zeppelin used everything and there wasn't much left over.
Right. And, when they did the re-pops, the most recent re-pops of the studio output, they did deluxe versions of these albums, which had another album with each album. And it had like instrumental tracks.
Yeah.
Or
I've got several of those, and they're really good.
Yeah. Or guide tracks.
Yeah.
Or you'll have like Battle of Evermore with no vocal. Just different takes on stuff. Because like you said, they were in that groove of putting an album out like every 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
For the first like 4 albums.
I mean, to think about it, their lifespan was 12 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they put out 8 proper studio albums plus Coda.
Right.
I mean, really, Coda was a proper studio album because it fulfilled an obligation, a contractual obligation
to the record company.
They had to put it out, and the record company listed it as a studio release.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, to not include Coda is kind of
it would be a mistake.
It would be a mistake.
Because this stuff was recorded when they were recording records.
Yeah.
It's just that these songs didn't make it on said records.
Yeah, even though the band was no more, it still kept the band in the spotlight.
Yeah, and one of the cool things, this came out 2 years after Bonzo died. One of the cool things is in the gatefold, you have just a whole series of shots of the dudes in the band from throughout their history. But a lot of these are later year pictures. The beards came in and all that good stuff.
Big hair.
Yeah, but it's a cool tribute to John Bonham. I always love this picture. Right here.
Yeah.
That's great. I think that's from In Through the Outdoor. It's a much better, I'm glad we're doing this because it's a much better record than I remember it being. I mean, I had this on cassette when I was like,
oh, wow,
like 16.
Yeah.
It's just not one that I went to. But knowing the history and everything now, it's kind of a cool listen.
Yeah, it really is. It's one of those things. It's been so maligned that, a lot of people just shove it off as, that's Coda.
Yeah.
But it's really anybody else's record, this would be, hey, maybe they're number 1.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know.
That's silly to even think of, that, hey, the album that occupies the bottom rung of the ladder would have been some band's best record.
Yeah. Yeah.
That just tells you what kind of output this band had.
Yeah. And the quality that all of their records really had within them. We'll talk about some with a little less quality.
Yeah.
And some that are almost perfect.
And they were really all about the album. They weren't about singles. They wanted an album.
Yeah.
I mean, everything we talk about with vinyl, they embodied.
Right. And that's why they're such a good band to start
Yeah.
this with. So our number 9 is the band's number 9. That's
Coda.
Coda. What do you think number 8 is? Because I have an idea, and I want to see if it matches up with yours.
Well, as we've talked, I mean, really with the band, it comes down to two sides of the band.
Mm-hmm.
It comes down to their first 6 albums and the rest.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's kind of the tale of two bands, because there was a lot going on that got in the way of them doing music later on in their careers.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that, you know, maybe it happens to all bands with popularity.
Yeah.
There are a lot of roadblocks to keep you from being.
For sure, there are. But the thing that happened with Led Zeppelin that I don't think anybody saw coming is basically these guys became the arena rock band.
Yeah, they invented a genre.
Right. And so not only do you have that pressure from having to perform live and playing at arenas and upping your game every time you do a tour, but you've got to put the music out.
Yeah.
And because those tours, it used to be that those tours supported the records. It's not like that anymore.
No.
But these guys were the originators, really, of arena rock as we know it.
And we'll get into that deeper as we get into the different albums.
Yeah.
I mean, basically their first 2 years of existence, they were on the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that is hard to even fathom.
Yeah. And you know that, I mean, we didn't start with this, but originally this band was going to be called the New Yardbirds.
Yeah.
Originally this band was going to basically take the baton from the Yardbirds and keep going with it.
And they performed as the New Yardbirds.
Yeah.
And that wound up being maybe the monkey on Led Zeppelin's back always. They always had some sort of contractual or tax problems. And it was to fulfill contractual agreements. So they performed as the New Yardbirds in Scandinavia in 1968.
Wow. That's interesting.
Their first show as Led Zeppelin was at the Bath Music Festival in 1969.
Okay.
The Bath Blues Festival in June of 1969.
And that would have been a great festival for a band like this, because the band in its earliest form was basically a blues band.
Yeah.
Like a full-on reinterpreting that blues era from America. And really, when you think about it, the funny thing is that the blues born in America is basically the blues today, because it was reintroduced to America through British bands. Isn't that crazy?
It's kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But I mean, that happens everywhere.
Yeah.
With music.
I mean, you know, a new set of ears and a new set of eyes on something can really make something sing in a way that it didn't before. What are you thinking for the number 8 record? Because I'm thinking In Through the Outdoor.
In Through the Outdoor. With the
paper bag on it.
The paper bag.
Or in the paper bag,
It's an original in the paper bag.
That is cool. So originally, we haven't dug into it.
We'll take it out.
Yeah, we haven't dug into it the way we have kind of talked about synchronicity. But, and I sent this to you, like, this story to you, like, a couple months ago. Remember, there are, like, 7 variations of this cover.
Yeah.
And apparently there's hidden stuff if you get part of the cover wet.
Oh, well, no, if you get this wet,
okay.
it gives you some sort of hidden message.
No kidding. Okay.
But I'm like, I don't want to ruin it.
So yeah. But so there are like 6 or 7 variations of this cover of This Guy in This Bar. And I think I had read that it's some kind of take on Casablanca. I just noticed that this says Coot.
Coot.
Which, whatever that is. I think that this is a fine number 8 record.
Yeah.
Because there are 2 songs that everybody knows from this, All My Love and Fool in the Rain. And then there's the rest of the songs.
Yeah. And
the record.
And really, if it wasn't for those 2 songs,
we wouldn't be talking.
Coda would be ahead of this.
Right. In the Evening, that's a great song.
Yeah.
Southbound Soiree, Fool in the Rain, Hot Dog is a throwaway.
Well, and it's funny. What I've said about this album is, one side is really good. If you do side 1, throw away Hot Dog and move All My Love, and then release an EP.
Yeah. And side 2 is Carousel Alhambra, All My Love, and I'm Gonna Crawl, which I'm Gonna Crawl
is not horrible.
It's not a horrible tune. This album, I think, was put together at a time when Jimmy Page was just out of his gourd.
Yeah.
And so the 2 people, well, and then, there were 3 people, other people in the band, but the 2 people that could actually organize stuff and get stuff together were Robert Plant and John Paul Jones. So this has a lot of keyboard and a lot of synthesizer.
Yeah, it's
stuff.
really the John Paul Jones album.
Yeah, and that's all John Paul Jones. This isn't one, just because those 2 songs, All My Love and Fool in the Rain, almost anytime you turn on classic rock radio, you're going to hear one of those.
Yeah.
And so I've heard those songs ad nauseum. So this isn't one that when I want to listen to Led Zeppelin that I grab for very often. Like anything else, once you haven't listened to it for a little while, you can come back to it with fresh ears. Even though we're doing this right now, I'm still thinking, should Coda go in ahead of this?
It just doesn't feel like it's almost like a Led Zeppelin cover band. Because at times it doesn't really feel like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. It feels like Led Zeppelin trying to adapt to the late 70s.
Yeah.
Trying to transform from that juggernaut that they were through the early to mid 70s as a touring arena band. And, all the wheels are starting to shake and creak and fall off. And it kind of feels like they're just trying to hold it together, to me.
This is almost where Plant's solo career started.
Absolutely.
He definitely had leanings to be more poppy and a little more...
croonery, almost.
Yeah.
More,
I don't want to say radio friendly, but he wanted songs that were more playable. He wasn't as interested in the album as the song.
Right. That's a great point. Maybe one day we can do a short about the cover variations of this. That might be a cool subject. I just always thought that it was, Led Zeppelin traditionally, like when you think about it, there's not a whole lot of graphic treatment to Led Zeppelin's covers. They're
did they even put? Yep, they put it on the spine.
It's on the spine,
which sometimes they didn't.
Yeah, but you can see these originally, at least the first pressing originally came in that paper bag.
Yeah,
and maybe there was a hype sticker on it, maybe there wasn't. But again, you're just like letting people look either at a brown paper bag or at a picture of a guy in a bar. So.
Yeah, and I've heard that Page did a lot of that because critics would rail on stuff, and so he didn't want people to know exactly who it was.
That's interesting.
And refer to it as this album or that album.
Yeah. And the other thing, since we're talking about Jimmy, he was the producer of every album that Led Zeppelin put out. The executive producer was Peter Grant, who was their manager.
Yeah.
Who was a formidable figure in management, in band management in the day. Kind of a strong arm, enormous dude. But the thing to keep in mind is that, Jimmy Page didn't just write those guitar riffs. It wasn't just the guitar player. He put everything together. And basically this band is Jimmy Page, right?
Yeah.
And since we're talking about him, he was the one who was missing from this record.
Yeah, which is
really strange to think about. But he had some substance issues, and I think everybody in the band did along the way. But Jimmy, it became
at this time, Jimmy and both Bonham were having lots of substance and alcohol issues.
Yeah. So that's kind of why this record was left in the hands of the other two dudes.
Well, and I mean, this came out in 79, but really the struggles with the band started in 77 because they were, that's when Plant's son, Carrick, died of a viral.
Oh, it was a viral thing.
Yeah. It just left a mark, and they were having tax issues.
Yeah. And wasn't there a car accident too?
Yeah.
That Robert was in?
That was a little earlier in 75.
Yeah.
But they couldn't record in England because of the tax. They couldn't even live in England because of the tax issues.
Right.
So they recorded this at ABBA's studio in Stockholm.
Oh, okay. Okay. I know they also recorded a couple albums in France.
Yeah.
Too. So, that and that was that's a story that a lot of the British bands tell too, because the Stones had the same issue.
And the Stones were recording, I think, at the same studio for this album.
Oh, were they?
And so they had to kind of rush the production from whatever they wanted to do to 3 weeks.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. I think that when you're talking about ranking albums by a band like this, I mean, I'm sure we'll eventually get to the Beatles. that's going to be another.
Well, we have to.
Yeah, it's going to be another level of difficulty because I think that for the 13 albums that the Beatles put out, people will argue against the last couple, but the quality of the music between the Beatles' first and Beatles' last studio output is pretty high.
Yeah,
and that's a pretty high bar, and that's why we're still talking about them. These guys, around the same amount of time, actually more time than the Beatles, because the Beatles was in 8 years.
Yeah.
These guys took their time a little more after the first couple of albums. The Beatles also didn't have to worry about that touring aspect.
Right.
So that wasn't even in the equation. But I feel pretty comfortable with Coda at 9 and with In Through the Outdoor at number 8.
Yes.
What do you think about number 7?
Number 7.
I've got my ideas. I'm thinking Presents.
Ding, 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 ding. And the cool thing with Presents is it's gatefold.
It is, yeah. And it's, it's got this, I don't even know. I know that there's a story behind the obelisk on the cover, and that the record company actually produced those and sent them out as promo things, that shaped thing in the middle of the table.
It was nominated for a Grammy for Best Album Design.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was by our good buddies Hypnosis.
No kidding. Yeah, so you've got this family sitting at a dinner table, and there's this black obelisk there, and in the background is just like a marina.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the story is.
Which I guess they...
And then you have these family photos.
Everybody...
The baby is my favorite one.
And supposedly that was to represent Led Zeppelin's presence.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was you got to have some art design theory behind it. And that was the theory.
I have just always thought that these photos,
it's just strange.
They're strange, but they are so much of that early 60s looking toward the future feel. You know what I mean? And it would be hard to fake that.
Yes.
And it would be hard to produce that, but they certainly did.
Yes.
One of the best things about the record is just the artwork.
The pictures are just so...
Yeah. I love the teacher on the back here too. So anyway, Presents. This, and it does have a little embossed, sorry, Keith. It does have a little embossed Led Zeppelin and then Presents underneath it, which you can't really see there, but that's cool too. This came out in
76.
The
band was fighting off the punk movement.
Right. And this album opens with maybe one of Led Zeppelin's best songs ever. I mean,
Yeah.
Achilles' Last Stand.
Yeah.
And it's like a 7-minute.
10.
It's 10?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like a 10-minute magnum
Yeah.
opus of this hard rocking. The thing that it reminds me very much of is Immigrant Song. Just that feel,
Yeah.
that tempo, that hard driving, rocking song. And his guitar solo in that song is just fantastic.
It really, I think that one song elevates it to the position.
Exactly. If it did not have that song on it, this may have fallen another step or two.
Yeah, there's some different songs on this album. It was another one that it was a highly anticipated album. Entered the charts at number 2, hitting number 1 the next week. There's not much else to say other than Achilles' Last Stand is so darn good.
It is. It's a great song. So it goes Achilles' Last Stand, For Your Life, Royal Orleans, Nobody's Fault But Mine.
Yeah.
That's another high point.
great song.
That opens the second side. Candy Store Rock, Hot's On for Nowhere. That's another of my favorites. I love that song. And then it ends with T for One. So the total length of the record's 44 minutes, and it's only got 7 songs on it, thanks to Achilles' Last Stand. 10 minutes and 26 seconds. You know, in the 70s, like you said, they were fighting off the punk movement. You're talking about the Ramones and songs that are 1:45, 2.5 minutes, and then the album opener is 10.5 minutes long. I love it's just like a big FU to...
That was the thing with the punk movement. Led Zeppelin was the band that was up on the shelf like, we don't want to be like them.
Yeah. They were...
Not that they didn't like their music. They just didn't want to be the bloated rock stars like them.
The corporate...
Yes.
Promoted rock stars that were ever present everywhere. Yeah. But that's also the funny thing, because you know what? If you had asked any of those bands, any of those members of those bands, maybe with the exception of the Sex Pistols, hey, would you like to be as big and as famous and as rich as them? I guarantee every one of them would have been...
Nobody would have said no.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting dichotomy when you think of what was going on with that punk movement at the time and what was changing with these bands, these late 60s rock bands.
Yeah.
How were they going to transform and fit into the music industry at that time?
This was more of a reflection of what the band had become than what the band was possible of producing.
Right. I will tell you that Hot's On for Nowhere is way up there for me as far as Led Zeppelin songs.
And that's the way we've talked about it, even Coda has some great songs.
Yeah. I will just say before we get to any further rankings that the album that introduced me to Led Zeppelin was 4. That was the one that I listened to first, got on cassette, had in my Walkman, had in my ghetto blaster, and I listened to it all the damn time. And when you're introduced to a band and you listen to an album from a band like that, your expectations are going to be pretty high.
Yes.
Because that album is solid.
Yes.
Then you measure it against these later albums that just don't have that cohesiveness, just don't have that quality from top to bottom.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with the band being pulled in so many different directions and having so much of life reflect on what they were trying to do.
Right.
I mean, they'd been around in 76. They'd already been around for 8 years.
Yeah.
So they were starting to not fizzle out, but the flame was not burning as bright.
Right. And falling apart at the seams.
Yeah.
And then you mix in heroin and alcohol and other drugs and wives and girlfriends and children tragically dying. I mean, and let's not forget the messing around with the occult that Jimmy Page was doing, and his fascination with Aleister Crowley and all that stuff.
Yeah, there's some
black magic, and
there's some really strange things that are affiliated with the band that it's like, really? Why were they doing that?
Yeah. I'm glad that we are talking about this, because this isn't like, if we weren't doing this ranking, I'm not sure that we'd talk about Coda or In Through the Outdoor or Presence ever.
No.
You know what I mean? And I had no idea that they won a Grammy for art design.
No, it was nominated.
Oh, it was nominated.
Yeah,
Oh,
it didn't
okay.
win.
Do you know who won that year?
No.
Oh, okay. That's a little tidbit. As much knowledge as I have up here about these guys, I had no idea that this was
They started
nominated.
working with Hypnosis, which
They worked with Hypnosis on
Houses of the
Houses of the Holy.
I think was when they start, and the rest of the albums were Hypnosis design.
Yeah. And we had talked, well, we'll talk about it when we get
Yeah.
to that album. But this is a good one. This is Presence by Led Zeppelin, 1977, and it is our number 7 Led Zeppelin record. What's number 6?
Now
We get into the difficult part, right?
it gets into the Jane, you ignorant slut part.
Do you just want me to say which one I think comes next?
Yes.
Okay, I think Physical Graffiti comes next.
John looks at his pile. John looks at Jay. John looks at his pile. John looks at Jay.
Do you not agree?
No. That's fair enough. I really like Physical Graffiti. I would put it much higher.
Mm-hmm.
And but I get it.
Here's my thought with Physical Graffiti. And we can go through the songs. First off, the cover and the die cut stuff with the building and everything, it makes it probably my favorite album just from an artwork standpoint. And as far as the music on it, see, you've got these on the back, you've got the windows with the different things in it. They were really into that side of it.
They were way into album design.
Yeah.
It was not something to be toyed with.
No, I don't think there was one aspect of any of this that Jimmy Page didn't have his hands in on. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I've read Hammer of the Gods. I've read a couple other Led Zeppelin books. Maybe he was a control freak. Maybe not. But
I think he was.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty apparent, even from the get-go of the new Yardbirds.
Yeah.
When he took that over,
Yeah.
he was just, who he was.
Right. But so this is what I will say about this. And this doesn't have to be number 6. We can kind of talk this out. But the only reason I say this is a double album. And I feel like, especially with double albums, if you take the best songs off of almost any double album throughout history and make it a single album, I think that elevates that record.
Yeah, they could have made this one of their, in my opinion, it's still in the top 3.
Yeah.
But they could have made it, without a doubt, one of the top 3 if they would have gotten rid of Boogie with Stu and put Into the Light and done one
In the
album.
Light. Yeah. Let me bring up the songs on here.
I don't have all the songs, but this thing sold. It's 16 times platinum in the U.S. and that is in 2006. I mean now, heck.
So, Physical Graffiti released February 24, 1975, recorded July and December 1970, and then January through March 1971, and then January through February 1974. So this was recorded over a long period of time.
Yeah, they finally had a long period to record, and it's kind of a treasure chest of deep cuts.
Yeah, for sure. So side 1, you've got Custard Pie, The Rover, In My Time of Dying, based on a traditional song that Bob Dylan recorded on his debut album in 1962. That's a good one. That is a solid one. Side 2 is Houses of the Holy, recorded as the title track for that album. It was left off that album because of its similarity to other tracks such as Dancing Days, which were felt to be better. And I never read that before.
Yeah.
I was just reading that for the first time. And yeah, there is that similarity. Trampled Underfoot, that's a great song. This says the lyrics are a series of double entendres around driving and cars. Interesting. Interesting. Kashmir, that's the big...
That's another big Led Zeppelin song.
That's the behemoth on this record, really. And, you know, the quality of that song and the legacy and legend of that song are enormous. Side 3, In the Light, which Wheels and I discovered recently is one of our...
It's my favorite Led Zeppelin tune.
Yeah, it's so good. Such a great... It's kind of another epic almost.
Yeah.
Very cinematic feeling, and there's movements to
The
to
way
that
the
song.
keyboards start,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
sets a feeling.
Bronyar, Down by the Seaside. I love Down by the Seaside. It's just such a weird song.
Yeah, they kind of dipped their toe in weirdness at times here, but it was all very bluesy.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, they didn't get out of that blues feel.
Right. That remained with the band
Yeah.
forever. I just think that's who they were.
Yeah.
I mean, Jimmy Page was not just in the Yardbirds, he was also a studio musician and played on countless other
Right.
records. But you think about it, I mean, at that time, the mid to late 60s, the blues just exploded
Yeah.
there. And it was such a part of his DNA and the band's DNA, no matter what they did. Then 10 Years Gone at the end of side 3. That's a fantastic song. Night Flight starts out side 4, Wanton Song. Boogie with Stu, which you've already heard from Wheels about that. Black Country Woman and Sick Again. Yeah, it's a fantastic record, but I just feel like if they had taken those best tunes and made it a single album, I feel like it would be right up there with the ones at the top of the
Yeah,
heap.
and I've heard that they had basically 3 sides worth of material that they wanted to include. So the 4th side was kind of stuff that they had left over from the first 3 albums.
Filler.
Yeah, filler.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's one of the reasons it drops down.
Yeah.
This is Plant and Page's favorite album.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I mean, just the size and scope of it, and I'm sure that there was more effort and time, as we just saw,
Yeah.
or as I just mentioned. I mean, this was recorded over a pretty long period of time in different years, so I could see how sitting with something like this for that long, you would
Yeah.
become more attached to it.
This was such an anticipated album that on pre-orders alone, it went platinum.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Well, we haven't even talked about the numbers. I guess maybe after we go through the rest of the records, then we'll
Yeah.
talk about the sales numbers for all of these. Needless to say, Led Zeppelin is one of the biggest selling artists in history. So,
Yeah.
You know.
And this was a big seller.
yeah, that's what this whole thing is, give and take. If you would rather this be further up than number 6, we can certainly finagle that.
No, I mean, there's, as we talked, going through, for me at least, 1 and 2 were definitely set. And then the next
The
group,
middle ones.
Yeah, the middle ones is where it gets really muddy.
Right.
That order can be flipped so many ways. And it's funny because I check out and see what other people are ranking.
Yeah.
And all 6 of those albums are on some people's number 1 list.
Yeah. Oh, the top 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's, I mean, I think sometimes that's I want clicks or reads.
Well, we certainly aren't. We aren't doing this for clicks. We're
No.
doing this is kind of an experiment because we've never really had to do this. We've never had to really collaborate.
And be boxed in a corner. So
Right.
we're going to piss some people off.
That's why we're here. I love the record. It's one that I will go to a lot
Yeah.
because of those standout songs that I mentioned. I mean, I don't need to hear Kashmir again.
Yeah.
But In the Light, Down by the Seaside, 10 Years Gone, those are just,
And it to me, it just flows really well.
it does.
Even though it's a double, every song flows really well together.
Yeah, yeah. And if you haven't been, this building is in the Village, near the Village in New York.
Yeah.
And my wife and I went there like 4 or 5 years ago. It's 96 and 98 St. Mark's Place in New York's East Village. And when Rachel and I went there, they had just like cleaned the front of the building.
Oh.
They had just like power washed it. So
Did you get a photo?
yeah.
Oh, yeah. You got to get a photo.
I'll have to share that. But it's so cool, the artwork and the idea behind all the die cut stuff and putting the different things in the windows. They really did have a lot of attention to artwork detail. And they were kind of one of the, not the originators, but they certainly took that and carried it with them through the rest of their output. What's number 5?
All right. This is where we're going to probably have some, well, we've already had disagreement. And we've pretty much, it's been in order from, the last release to on back.
Yeah.
So now,
You go ahead and pull it out.
for me,
You know what? It's probably going to be the same one that I'm thinking.
I don't think so.
No, go for it.
I'm going to put 3.
Oh, man. Really?
I know you want 3 higher. You really like 3.
I do.
And I like 3. I don't like it as much. After listening to it, it's like, wow, I don't want to say it's uneven, but
It covers a lot of, it's very broad.
yeah.
Yeah. And this is your original version of 3 with the spinning wheel, which is so cool. Such a neat little detail. Yeah, and this is also a gatefold, which it's just basically got that artwork in the middle of it. So this starts out with Immigrant Song, which
Yes.
I think it's safe to say is one of their best songs, one of their most memorable tunes.
Yeah.
I mean, it just kicks you in the teeth and starts out that way, and it's that way through the whole thing.
And very Led Zeppelin like, at least in later years, the songs are in the inside cover.
Yeah, yeah. Very different. And then I've always liked that image on the back too. Manufactured by Columbia House under license. So this is a Columbia House version of this?
I guess. I don't know. I bought it at a record show.
I didn't think Columbia House had the actual spinning wheel. This thing may be worth some cash, man.
There's so many different pressings of so many different albums out there. It's hard to tell.
I mean, we've talked about it before, but it's just interesting that those Columbia House, and then what was the other one?
Did BMG do that?
Maybe.
But that was later.
Yeah.
I mean, Columbia House was the originators of the music club.
Yeah. But we've talked about before, it's just kind of strange that those Columbia House versions of records are worth so much money. But so Led Zeppelin 3, let's pull up the song listing.
And it came out in 1970. I mean, think about that. The band put out 3 albums in 2 years.
Yeah. 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 This came out in October 5, 1970.
And I mean, think about this. Just think about this for a second. They started in 68, and by 1970, they were on their 6th tour of America.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of the reason they became as big as they were.
Yeah.
Is because touring here was a priority for them.
But I mean, 6 tours in 2 years?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. So side 1 is Immigrant Song. Friends, it's an acoustic song. That's the thing about this record is it kind of has that Americana, that folky, but it starts out with the Immigrant Song.
Yeah.
I mean, those are 2 sides of the spectrum. And that all plays into Jimmy Page was always into the light and shade, is what he would say. He loved those dynamics that the band could play in, the really heavy, kick you in the face songs, and then the really light, pretty songs with the lyre and the mandolin and acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And this was really the first album that they introduced a lot of that acoustic guitar playing on. And that's what always really got me, because I started with Led Zeppelin 4 and listened to it constantly. And then I got this and I'm like, this almost doesn't even sound like the same band.
Yeah.
You know? But anyway, Friends is the second song, 4 Sticks.
And pretty much the whole thing was recorded on the road.
Yeah.
Because they were touring nonstop. So they recorded it in studios in America, Europe, all over the place.
Well, they used the Rolling Stones mobile studio. They recorded at Headley Grange, Hampshire Island, and Olympic Studios in London. And again, the length of this record is 43 minutes and 4 seconds. But then we go to Since I've Been Loving You, which is hands down probably my favorite Led Zeppelin song. I know it's my wife's favorite. And
oh, really?
It's just an epic blues song, kind of stretched out over, it's like 7 or 8 minutes long. It became a live performance staple for the band throughout the rest of their career. And before that, it kind of took the place of I Can't Quit You, Baby. Page's guitar solo was featured on both the recorded version and in the band's live show. Out on the Tiles, that's another favorite of mine. I've just always gravitated toward that. The second side is Gallows Pole, and Tangerine, which
Tangerine, yeah.
that's a great song.
I think Tangerine has really withstood the test of time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a song that gets played and it doesn't seem overplayed.
You're right. And there was a time like after that box set came out in 90 that it kind of popped up.
Yeah.
And you'd hear it more often, but I haven't heard it as much recently.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a power ballad almost.
Yeah.
Done only the way that Led Zeppelin can do it. It's
Right.
a great song. That's one of the highlights. That's the Way and Bron-Y-Aur Stomp, and hats off to Roy Harper. You know, I'm comfortable with this one being number 5. Definitely. When we talk through it.
Critics were not terribly warm about this album,
Right.
and that really pissed off Page. Which, I mean, we see that in future albums. Some of the stuff that he's like, we're not putting our name on any more albums.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you think about it, their success from the beginning was almost an explosion, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, maybe they just expected that everything they did was always going to be welcomed with open arms, and it's just not that way for any band. It's not that. There was stuff that the Beatles did that people hated, not nearly as much as you would hear about with other bands, but you know, I'm sure that at some point as an artist that's so big like these guys became, you just have to do what you do and try not to let it, you know.
It was such a departure from 1 and 2.
Right.
That I think it shocked everyone.
Yeah.
That they're like, what are they doing? Why are they doing these power ballads? And why is all this acoustic guitar?
But see, the thing is,
that's the beauty of it.
Right. Yeah. That's the beauty of it. And it is that light and shade, that heavy and light kind of thing. But, you know, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. That song sounds like it belongs on this record.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's one of the things I love about the band is just, you know, it's a bombastic hard rock band, but they play with dynamics. There's the ability to be very fragile and the ability to knock somebody's skull open.
Yeah, and I think with this step, the third step, you don't get the rest.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, because they kind of opened the door to be able to stretch their legs creatively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we're still talking about them. So even if this wasn't a critic's darling album, I think they're doing okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 5, Led Zeppelin 3. And this is going to get real confusing because so many of these records are numbers.
Yeah.
So our next one, our Led Zeppelin number 4 ranked is, drum roll please.
Give me your idea.
My idea is Houses of the Holy.
Bingo.
And this is the Japanese press I got for you, like 5 years ago?
Yeah, that was the gift of the Magi.
Yeah, this is just so you guys know, inside baseball here, this was the only original Led Zeppelin record that Wheels did not have, and we were at Crossroads, and I went and bought it for you.
Yeah, and the reason I didn't have it, because I was trying to get all the originals, and the reason I didn't have this one is because every single Houses of the Holy I came across was worked.
Doesn't it seem like it's the most abused
it's
record
very
of theirs?
Strange, yeah.
Yeah, but this one's in pretty good shape, and the color on this one is really what popped to me. A lot of times this orange is just so faded for some reason, but this one is obviously a Japanese pressing, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
And that's the other thing with sidebar with Japanese pressings, they seem to usually be in really good shape.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever spends the time to get a Japanese press, they're going to take really good care of that record.
Well, this is me theorizing here. I know that a lot of the way that Japanese pressings would get to the U.S. is through folks in the military.
Oh, yeah.
And they'd buy them. Obviously, if you're in the Army or you're stationed somewhere, you're probably not going to be listening as much as schmoes like us back home. So that stands to reason that those records would be less abused.
Very true.
Right. So Houses the Holy, released
73.
March 28, 1973. And it benefited from 2 band members installing studios at home, which allowed them to develop more sophisticated songs and arrangements and expand their musical style. Which 2? I don't know. I'm guessing Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones. It's such a great record. It kind of has a lighter feel to it.
Yeah.
To me, than a lot of the other, because Jamaica has that reggae island type feel, and that perfect for them to plug right into that, because that's when Bob Marley and all the reggae stuff was starting to really pop.
Yeah.
Dancing Days is kind of it's a strange song, but a light, kind of airy feeling song. It just feels like they didn't have a lot of constraints.
Yeah, they were definitely, it was more that of them stretching their creative legs.
Yeah, yeah. And the artwork done by Hypnosis, who we've talked about many times.
This was Hypnosis' first work with the band.
I used to think that this was Robert Plant's kids, and it's not. But I did come across a story where the photo shoot for this album cover took like 11 days. 11 days. Because of rain and weather and stuff. So this is also... And I didn't think about this until now, Wheels. This is also one of the record covers that can get people in Facebook jail.
Yes.
So should we cover this up and not show it?
Can we show the other side?
Nope.
How about we show the gatefold?
Yeah. Let's whip it open.
Yeah.
Which is just a distant shot of a naked child on...
But that's not going to get us in any trouble.
An old rune.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love this OBI strip on here too. And it looks, I don't know, the previous 4 records are on the inside of that OBI strip. So maybe it was a set or a set of pressings that were made available. I don't know. It says 2,500.
I can't read kanji, so.
Let's talk about the songs on this. So it starts off with The Song Remains the Same, which is the title to the live album and movie that the band put out. And when did we say? 1976?
Yeah.
Yeah. Rain Song, which may be one of my favorite Zeppelin tunes. Over the Hills and Far Away, another great song. The Crunge, which is the song on this album that I can do without.
Really? I kind of...
It's just weird enough that I would expect you to love it.
I like it. But that's one of the reasons this is probably the most polarizing album in the top 6.
Do you think so?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's some list, again, I've seen lists with this as number 1.
Yeah.
But this is the one that I think a Led Zeppelin fan will find, I don't like that song.
I don't know. The only one on here that I have any issue with is The Crunge.
Yeah.
And it's just such a weird song.
It's very weird.
But when you go to the second side, you've got Dancing Days, Jamaica, No Quarter, and The Ocean. And I think all 4 of those are just fantastic examples of Led Zeppelin.
Well, and Jamaica that's a class. It's one of those that they took a chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah. It's a great song. I mean, it's one that if it's on the radio, a lot of times I've listened to so much Zeppelin that a lot of times if I hear one of these songs, I'll just immediately change the channel. But if Jamaica is on, I let it play through.
And it became a top 20 hit in the U.S.
Oh, did it?
I think it was the band didn't release singles.
Right.
Which is strange.
Right.
I think it was the only single that was released, and it was almost like a joke.
This record, I've always loved it, but I think it kind of lives in the shadows.
And this is the first one that had a proper name.
Yeah.
And not a number.
That's true. That's true. And it still doesn't say it anywhere on it, not even on the spine. But yeah, it's a great record.
And this was a big commercial success. I mean,
yeah.
Which, although it had, a kind of a mixed critical reception, the commercial success was great.
Yeah. It's 40 minutes and 57 seconds long, so almost 41 minutes long. When you think about it, a lot of bands were releasing records with 8, 9 songs, and they'd be 34, 35 minutes.
Yeah.
So you're getting your money's worth with Led Zeppelin.
Oh, yeah.
Here. What are you thinking for our next one? I'm not checking my phone for those of you playing at home. I'm looking at my list. So Wheels, our number 3.
We're getting down to the nitty gritty.
We're getting down to the nitty gritty, and we're getting down to number 3, number 1, number 2.
Yeah.
Our number 3 is actually Led Zeppelin, number 1.
Woohoo!
It's tough to put this album in this position because this is the groundbreaking album. Between them and Black Sabbath, they created heavy metal. But at the same time, this record really isn't heavy metal. This record is some weird stew of rock, maybe hard rock and blues mixed around.
Yeah.
But I will say there are a couple of songs on here that I think are the best songs that they ever did. I just really feel like this position is where this one belongs.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, this is because it's the first album. It's a little different. They've got the name on the front.
And the matching Atlantic logo.
Yeah, and the iconic Zeppelin.
Yeah. Which, you know, it's kind of strange to me.
And song titles on the back.
And the portraits of each of them, which is cool. But Good Times, Bad Times. Ugh, what a great song to open this record with. But the one on here that I absolutely love is their version of Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You.
Yeah, this album is brilliant, but they were ripping off blues like crazy.
Led Zeppelin made a career ripping off blues.
Yeah.
And they weren't even giving credit to the original dudes. Then it came down, they had to.
Yeah.
Willie Dixon, all of these old blues guys, a lot of these songs were basic reworkings of
their songs.
So,
and I mean, as wonderful as the band is, they've been sued a number of times for copyright infringement.
Well, I mean, you know, it's interesting because it's an appropriation.
Yeah.
Right? Of a cultural thing.
Sure.
And like we said, in the 20s, 30s, 40s, these songs lived in the South here in the U.S. and traveled through the country. And then by the 50s, you know, these guys were forgotten about.
Yeah, which is a shame.
It's a shame. But you think about it, Little Richard, I always put Little Richard before Elvis because I think he belongs before Elvis. But Little Richard, Elvis, Bill Haley and the Comets, all of these guys basically got credit for creating rock and roll.
Yeah.
And the blues lived in the shadow of rock and roll. And then you had, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bands making rock and roll.
Yeah, doing the same thing.
So until Britain reintroduced America to its blues music, it was forgotten for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
It's a crazy story. But anyway, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You is their version of the Joan Baez song. And that may be the best thing that these guys ever did. I just think it's fantastic. You Shook Me, Dazed and Confused, Your Time Is Gonna Come, Black Mountain Side, Communication Breakdown. That's another just standout song on here. That is like a heavy metal song.
Oh, yeah.
Then you have I Can't Quit You, Baby, and How Many More Times.
And this is another album that everything flows.
Oh, yeah. It goes together really well.
It is just tremendous to listen to this front and back.
Yeah. A lot of times when I talk about these records, I just try to think back, like with this, hearing this for the first time, how crazy that would have been.
Yeah, because this was for sure groundbreaking.
Yeah. And I think the same thing about Black Sabbath. Like, what was it? Because when I first heard Black Sabbath, it was probably the mid 70s, and it scared the hell out of me then. You know what I mean? What would I have thought in 1968 if I hear, you know, the song Black Sabbath? I probably would have run into a closet and hidden for 5 years.
Yeah, and a lot of these songs they'd already played in 68. This came out in January of 69. Mm-hmm. So it just really kicked off that year with, hey, this is who we are and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, and it's the length on this is 44-45. It is it 10? No, it's 9 songs. But again, you know, if you let me look at it here. There are a couple songs on here. Your Time Is Gonna Come is 441. Dazed and Confused at the end of side 1 is 627. And You Shook Me, the song before that, is 630.
Yeah, they were.
So they weren't like, hey, we need these short, peppy 2-minute pop songs. I mean, these are...
They were getting a lot of pressure from record companies to make their stuff more concise and do things a certain way. And they bucked the trend throughout their career.
Yeah. This is a great one. It always shocked me, though, because of the image. I mean, it's a shocking image, right? It's the Hindenburg crashing. It's just very interesting to me. And there is, I don't know what version it is, but is the original the yellow or the red? Because
I don't know.
Yeah. I think the yellow might be a second or third pressing.
Yeah, this might even be an import.
It could be. It does kind of look like it's got that fold over on it. So that could be a German import or something. But no, that's a great one. This is the kind of a definitive album because I think it was groundbreaking, not just for the band, but for rock and popular music.
Yeah, it was. The world was changed in 69.
Forever. So number 1 is number 3 for us.
Yes.
What is number 2?
So number 2, and here's where it gets tricky. I mean, really, these last two can be in either order.
I think these last 2 are both number 1, but we have to choose a number 1 and a number 2. We have to choose. So number 2, I think number 2 would be Led Zeppelin 2. Right?
Good choice.
Because we were talking before we started the show, which is always a bad idea. I have for a long time thought that this is the ultimate Zeppelin record. I love it from start to finish. It's fantastic. And when you think about it, did we ever talk about this on the sophomore show?
No, we should have.
We should have.
I don't think we did.
This is absolutely maybe the best example of
not a sophomore slump.
But I can't think of any second album. Really by any band that is this good front to back. You know what I mean?
Maybe Nirvana. Well, Nevermind.
Yeah. I think it's easy to forget that that Nevermind is their second. But this is just solid from start to finish.
Yeah, it really is. And it's gatefold. We love gatefold.
Oh, we love the gatefolds. I love the artwork on the inside with the Zeppelin, and they each have like a column with their name on it. I also love the artwork. It's like this old World War I photo that they just placed themselves in the middle of with a bunch of these pilots, which is very cool. This also really stands out as a record because there is a pressing of this, the Robert Ludwig pressing of this, that is very highly sought after, and it's going for hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Basically, I think it was the first run of the first pressing, and Robert Ludwig did the mastering, and it's a lot louder, and a lot of people say it's a lot punchier and sounds better than any of the subsequent pressings. But I think there were less than, I don't know, maybe there were less than 100,000 of them.
There weren't many.
Yeah. But I think that it's nice that it lines up in the second position.
Yes.
Because then we don't have to keep track of it because we've had a little issue with it today. But it's just, it is probably my favorite. And it's kind of a hidden favorite. I feel like it lives in the shadow of all of the other ones. It's not the first, but there are other ones that I think get a lot more attention.
And it came out the same year as the first.
Right.
I mean, it came out later in 69.
Yeah. Which is insane as well to do that first record, and the second one within 8 months of each
Yeah.
other, and it's so good.
Yeah, and they did it while touring relentlessly.
Yeah. Both in Europe and in
Yeah.
the U.S. They did a lot of U.S. touring. Did we go through all the songs?
No.
Did we go through them? Okay. So it starts out with Whole Lotta Love, which is just an epic Zeppelin tune. What is and what should never be. The Lemon Song, Thank You. And on side 2, you've got Heartbreaker, Living Loving Maid. You know, those two songs are played together.
They have to be.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever listen to Heartbreaker and Living Loving Maid doesn't follow it up right immediately, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Ramble On, Moby Dick, and Bring It On Home. I mean, this is it's a tour de force.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't even know what the length is on this one. But the first album came out January 12, 1969. This one came out October 22, 1969. Yeah. So, 9 months later.
Yeah, this is a band that obviously knew what they were creating, and this thing just has a confident swagger.
Oh, it does.
I mean, it just says, hey, we're Led Zeppelin, and we're going to be the biggest rock band in the world.
And I think the first one has a confidence too, but there's something magical about the way this feels. This feels like like a quantum leap from that confidence from the first one. And like I said, my foray into Zeppelin was 4 and 4A, get it?
Nice.
I see what I did there. And I just remember when I started discovering the other records, my teenage mind was just blown to pieces. This is a great one.
I mean, and it's amazing to think, hey, it was put together on the road.
Yeah. But I mean, when you really think about it, it's bass, drums, vocals, and guitar.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of production. I mean, you just plug in, crank it up, and blow people's
and play.
Minds. Yeah. And it's just a great record. And I can't believe this is one that we left off of our sophomore
I know.
episode. We need to do another sophomore episode. So our number 2 on the Led Zeppelin ranked is Led Zeppelin 2.
This really set the template for heavy metal.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
This is the first thing that a heavy metal band needs to pick up and listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those of you playing at home, that means that only one other record could be number 1, and that is number 4, of course.
Or Untitled.
Or Untitled, yeah.
Yeah.
Or
And
some people called it Runes.
Yeah.
For whatever
Or
reason.
Zoso.
Or Zoso. Yeah, there's a lot of titles. You got the old man carrying the sticks on there. Of course, there's nothing on the front or back cover that tells you anything about what's...
Or even on the spine.
Or even on the spine.
Or
in the middle.
Yeah.
There's too much reflection. But yeah, you've got the old wizard with the lantern.
And this
there.
was a direct result of the critics not being kind and Page saying, hey,
F you.
F you, establishment. And they went back and forth with the record company. The record company was like, there's no way you'll have any success not putting the name anywhere.
Yeah. It's an interesting
but it worked.
approach. I think anything would have worked at this point for these guys, right? So this was released November 8, 1971. Running time is 42:20. It was recorded with the Rolling Stones Mobile at Headley Grange, Headley Island Studios in London, and Sunset Sound in Los Angeles. And aside from one song, I adore this album from beginning to finish.
Yeah, I mean, there are no less than 5 hit songs.
Yeah, starts out with Black Dog. It goes to Rock and Roll, The Battle of Evermore, which is a song that I could do without. And it's a beautiful song with like mandolin, and there's a second, like a duetting female voice with Robert, but it's just never been one that I enjoyed. And then the first side ends up with Stairway to Heaven, and that's a 7-minute and 55-second song. And then you go to Misty Mountain Hop, 4 Sticks, Going to California, and When the Levee Breaks, which
It's a greatest hits.
Yeah, it really is a greatest hits. And I think for a lot of people, maybe not you, but for a lot of people my age, this is the one that sucked you in to their orbit.
And this was the first one I bought.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a great one to buy. I mean, what better example of a band than an album that like has 5 hits on it? There's not one. And we've talked about the Beatles at length, and there are 10s and 20 Beatles shows that we could do. The Beatles and Led Zeppelin only are comparable for just a little while. You know what I mean? Zeppelin kind of came in and began at that time when the Beatles were basically on their way out.
Yeah.
So they were only contemporaries in very small ways.
Very, very small ways.
But and we've talked about this before, what do you think Led Zeppelin's success would have been like had the Beatles continued onward?
I think music was changing.
Yeah.
And it was in their favor. I mean, there were a lot of bands coming on that played harder rock music.
Right.
And certainly progressive bands were becoming more popular.
Yeah.
And they had progressive elements.
They definitely did, but I think Zeppelin was able to take that rock, the blues, progressive, and experimental and put it all in one pot and stir it up.
Yeah. And even folk thrown in there.
And folk thrown in, and Americana.
Yeah.
When you really think about it, they covered a lot of bases as far as stylistically. And for them to do that and have the success that they had and carried all the way through their career is just amazing when you think about it. And they were only around a short period of time, like the Beatles.
Right. Right. They weren't around for, I mean, we talked about it. It was only
12 years.
12 years.
Yeah.
And really the last, from 75 on, they were around, but they weren't really around.
It was kind of shaky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
and this came out in 71.
Yeah.
I don't know if we mentioned
Yeah,
it.
I did.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But it's, I think if someone were to come up to me and say, where do I start with Led Zeppelin?
You got to start here.
This would be the one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best of everything, but I think with all of those influences that we talked about, with as many just stone cold hits as this thing has, with the expanse of it, the grandiosity of it, it's everything came together for Led Zeppelin on Led Zeppelin 4.
And you'll see people, organize these lists, and to not put this one as number one is a crime.
And I will say, and I'm going to make a statement right now, I don't think that albums or songs should be punished because of success.
No.
And that's why most people throw the shield up at Led Zeppelin 4 is because Stairway to Heaven's on it. Well, you don't hear Stairway to Heaven on the radio every 5 minutes like you used to.
Right.
Listen to that song and tell me that it's not just almost a perfect song.
Yeah.
It's just great. It's got movements in it. It's got all of those elements, the progressive, the hard rock, the light, the folkiness. I mean, everything came together in that song.
Yeah.
And people punish this band and this album
for the success
of that song.
Yeah,
and
because this sold what?
Get your list of how many each of these records sold, because I don't know how up to date it is, but I think that this has sold like
37 million.
Yeah, and it's probably more than that. But
it's probably more than that. I don't know when this list came out.
It's 3 times Diamond. What did number 2 sell?
Number 2 was Led Zeppelin number 2, 15, almost 16 million.
That's incredible. And 3's next on the list?
3's next on the list, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But it sold 13 million. And then Houses of a Holy was very close. It was like 12.5.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go to Led Zeppelin 1.
Which blows my mind that would be number 5.
Yeah.
As far as sales.
10 million.
Yeah.
And then Physical Graffiti at almost 10 million, 9 million.
And like I said, don't quote me, but I think that double albums count as 2 record sales. So that says 10 million. If that's the case, then 5 million. Sold 5 million copies of it, and they get 2 for every 1 sale.
I see.
Because of the price.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then In Through the Outdoor sold almost 7 million. And then we get into a bunch of box sets.
Box set, Song Remains the Same, Mothership. And then what did Coda sell? Or Presence?
Presence was number 11 on their list, and
Okay.
it was almost just shy, or no, it was about 3.5 million.
Okay. And then Coda's not on that list?
Coda's
then,
on the list. It just falls a lot further down. Number 17 on the list is Coda with 1.139 million.
I bet it sold more than
It's
that.
sold more than that now.
So what was this process like for you?
It was, the best thing was having a reason to go back through and listen to the albums.
Yeah. Yeah. And like 5 days ago, you said, I'm going through and I'm listening to them in reverse order. And
Yeah.
I was like, that blew my mind. I'm like,
It
that's
was just,
great.
I'm like, this is a different approach. I want to see where they were and where they started.
Yeah. That's great. I even felt bad when I listened to Coda. I listened to Coda this morning when I woke up again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I feel so bad because I feel like I badmouthed this record my whole life, and it's not that bad.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I listened to it again last night just because I wanted to hear it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah.
We're Gonna Groove, man.
We're going to groove.
That is a great song. And it like I said, there's kind of a heaviness built in with this band because of all the folklore surrounding them, all the rumors about them selling their souls to become famous, and just kind of like the Robert Johnson story.
Well, yeah, and didn't Plant lived in Aleister Crowley's house?
No, Jimmy Page did.
Page did. Okay, I thought it was Plant.
No,
for some reason.
And it's on a lock in Scotland somewhere or something. Yeah. So there was a lot of darkness around this band.
Yeah.
Just built in. And I think that they also probably played along with that because
they did. Because
isn't
it on one of the Run Out Grooves, there's an Aleister Crowley line?
Oh, I haven't heard that. I can't believe I haven't heard that before. We'll have to look for it now.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put that. We'll post about that because we'll put our ranking of these up, and the whole reason to do this is to stimulate conversation between us and you guys, because it's easier than ever to communicate.
Yeah.
And I know that people have things going on and they have families and jobs and other hobbies that don't include, the sickness that we have. Maybe we'd love to see what your guys' ranking of these records is.
Yeah, because there's no wrong ranking. It's just, this is two guys' opinion and we could be wrong.
Yeah, and it's stepping out on a ledge and saying, hey, this goes here. And you know what I think is great? We didn't coordinate our list beforehand. We didn't talk about what was number 1 through number 9. We just did it. And with the exception of 2 records, I think our lists were
pretty much right in line.
Yeah. So you're talking about somebody who was a Zeppelin fan from basically, since I was 12, and you, who weren't a fan until later.
Yeah.
Our lists jive like that, which I wouldn't have expected.
The problem is you're both wrong.
Voice of VOK. We're both wrong. But it's been really fun to kind of think about this in a different way than we normally do.
Yes, it is, for sure.
And I think it's worked out really well. Who do you think the next band that we should rank is?
Oh, I mean, we definitely can't do somebody like Dylan, who has 400 albums.
Well, what we could do is we could rank the top 10 of
we could
whoever.
And the Stones are the same way.
Yeah, and the Beatles are the same way too.
Yeah.
So I just feel like
it was easy with these guys because there's only so much material.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot more to cull from when you're talking about the Stones and the Beatles.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll throw that out to you guys too. If you have an idea for a really good band ranking show, let us know. And I don't want to forget to tell you, you need to subscribe and you need to like our videos on our YouTube page and comment and share all that stuff, because our YouTube page is picking up a lot of steam, but we want it to pick up more steam, and we're getting a lot of views for our unboxing, our Kiss unboxing. We're going to release another one of those that Wheels does. I'm not going to tell you which record. We're still doing our 45 and 45s. We got our shorts, and we're just trying to load up the YouTube page with a lot of different the what's in your bags.
Yeah.
Are pretty popular with folks now too. So
it's about a love of vinyl.
Yeah. So we just want to thank everybody for coming along with us and playing along and still listening to the podcast and checking out all the ancillary things we're doing with the YouTube page. So for Wheels, I'm Jay, and we'll see you all the next time around.